I'm Spencer Mazyck, and joining me now is author Jakoby. He is the co-chair of the Securities and Commodities Litigation and Regulatory Practice Group at Herrick Feinstein. He represents Beacon and Andover funds in a recent settlement that may pay some investors who were cheated by Bernie Madoff back in full. Welcome, author. Thank you for joining us today.
Spencer, it's a pleasure to be here.
So first, can you tell us a little bit more about your clients? Who are they and how are they connected to Madoff's Ponzi scheme?
Sure. I represented two feeder funds. One is Beacon Associates and one is Andover Associates. What a feeder fund is, as you've probably read in the newspapers, not everyone could have access to Madoff. In fact, that was part of the mystique of Madoff, that even if you wanted to invest in Madoff, you couldn't always get your money into Madoff.
Not directly anyway.
Not directly anyway. So there were feeder funds, and there were a lot of them. We're not the only ones. There were dozens of them. And the feeder funds had access to Madoff, usually through some connection with Madoff, whether it be a friendship or whether it be a business relationship. And what the feeder fund is, it's a hedge fund. And people would invest in the hedge fund. And certainly with respect to Beacon and Andover, they knew that a very big percentage of their money was going to be going into Madoff.
So were the feeder funds assets, though, derived from ERISA-governed employee benefit plans?
Some of them were ERISA government, correct, that's exactly right. A lot of it was ERISA money.
Okay, and so how much was the combined settlement that you reached in November?
Well, to understand the combined settlement, you have to understand their Madoff loss. And by Madoff loss, I mean principal invested that disappeared. Disappeared because in December of 2008, the world learned that Madoff was a fraud.
Right, of course.
And there was no money.
This massive Ponzi scheme that he...
Correct. Altogether, at the end of the day, our Madoff loss was $165 million.
Principal investment.
Principal investment, correct. It's a combination of about $141 million of loss that we realized in December 2008, and then actually in order to settle, there was actually a payment, so that added to our loss of $165 million.
And so the total settlement that was reached in November was?
Okay, well, it's pretty complicated.
Okay, tell us, explain it to us then.
Because there are two settlements.
Right, there are two settlements. There's one main global settlement.
Correct, and it's comprised of two settlements. On the one hand, the funds, as well as the New York Attorney General's Office, the Department of Labor, as well as several other law firms, sued Ivy, as well as some other smaller entities that we claimed were responsible for our losses. And my investors, my two funds, are going to net. So I'm giving you a net number after all of our expenses and fees. We're going to net approximately $100 million off of that. Now remember, we have a $165 million loss. So we're going to get back right away $100 million. And that settlement, although it's signed and completed, it has not yet been approved by a court, but it's expected to be approved.
One of the allegations there was that Ivy Asset actually knew or suspected that something was wrong here.
That's exactly
Madoff.
right. The allegation was that Ivy knew that something was wrong and that they didn't properly make the disclosure. In fact, there was an email, there are many emails, but there was an email where there was discussion about Madoff and his legitimacy. And somebody posed the question that they're forgetting one option. One option is that he's a fraud.
Okay. And so with respect to this settlement, though, in exchange for paying this sum of money, they're not going to admit to any wrongdoing, are they?
That's exactly right, and that's how these settlements are usually constructed.
So tell us about the second settlement here.
Okay. So on the one hand, we're getting about $100 million from Ivy and then a few other smaller defendants. On the second hand, we went to the trustee. We told the trustee, we have a big loss. We want to get paid. And we did that sometime in 2010 because there was a 2-year limitation after the 2008 disclosure that Madoff was a fraud. So we submitted a loss of $141 million. And the trustee said, not only am I not going to allow your $141 million loss, but I'm going to sue you. And I want $28.3 million from the funds. And the legal basis for the trustee's claim is that whatever knowledge either Ivy had or our fund managers, that would be imputed to the funds themselves.
Right, exactly.
And therefore we were a bad player, and therefore not only are we not going to get our $141 million loss approved, but they also wanted to take money away from us. And we had money left over after the Madoff fraud because not all of our investments were in Madoff. We had non-Madoff investments as well, although in Beacon, the overwhelming majority of money was in Madoff.
I was going to say, what percentage was in non-Madoff?
It was approximately, in Beacon, approximately 25% was in non-Madoff, and in Andover, it was as high as 70%. So Andover only had about 30% in Madoff. But the overwhelming majority of the Beacon assets, and that was the larger fund, was in Madoff. So the trustee said, I'm not going to prove your loss, and I want $28.3 million. We ended up settling with the trustee. And we said, you know what, we don't think your claim is valid, but if you agree to leave us the money that we're getting from Ivy, not touch it at all, and not reduce our loss, then we'll agree to give you some money back. In other words, the trustee could have taken the position, you have a $141 million loss, you're getting $100 million from Ivy,
yes.
You now only have a $41 million loss. We said, no.
Right.
We don't want you to count the money that we're getting from Ivy. And under that condition, we're going to give you back some money, even though we don't think that you deserve the money back.
Well, so is that how you kept the trustee from actually challenging the settlement?
Correct.
Because he's actually challenged several other settlements here, too.
Correct. He's challenged Merkin, he's challenged Fairfield, and when they've gotten money back from third parties, he's sued to stop them from getting that money and to take it for himself. So what we said was, listen, we don't think we owe you the $28.3 million, but we'll give you some of it. And we negotiated down the number. And we negotiated it down to $24 million, although in truth, Ivy gave us $2 million of the dollars, so we're only paying $22 million. But we said we have $24 million to give you. If we give you $24 million, we want you to approve our $141 million loss and add the $24 million to it.
Okay.
So that will equal $165 million. And now we want you to approve a $165 million claim, ignore the fact that we got back $100 million already, and we then want you to allow the claim. What that means is that the trustee is now going to pay us back on the $165 million claim. In fact, the trustee, in a few weeks, is going to be giving us our first back payment.
Right, because the trustee settlement was actually approved by Manhattan Bankruptcy Court December 4th, right?
That's exactly right. So we're actually going to be getting about $68 million in a few weeks. And we expect overall, as the trustee distributes more and more money to the victims, and now he's considering us a victim, we're going to get in excess of $107 million.
So what's the total, the grand total here?
And it may be more than $107 million. So we're going to get back around $207 million plus to our investors. And remember, our loss is $165 million.
So no, that's incredible. So it seems like they're going to be made whole plus more, correct?
Right. Madoff may turn out to be one of their better investments.
Well, I don't know if I would go that far.
But think about the return.
Right, of course. But so what's the timeline for the distribution of the settlement here?
Okay. It's complicated, and there are two settlements.
And please explain it to us then.
Okay, so on one hand, you have what I'll call the district court settlement. That's where the AG, who I must compliment because they did a tremendous job for us in the Department of Labor. There were several other law firms involved. And there, we're going to be getting money. I hope the distribution will be directly to the investors sometime in the second half of 2013. It could be delayed, but it's coming. Mm-hmm. With respect to the trustee, some of that money is going to come to us within a few weeks, and it's going to come in over time. I would hope that the break-even point for the investors, where they get a return of all their principal, is going to be some point towards the end of 2013, and anything they collect beyond 2013 will be profit. And it may be that they'll make a profit actually before the end of 2013.
Do you know of any other settlements quite like this where the investors receive more than 100% of their principal investments back?
I'm unaware of any.
I know that's what makes this particular settlement, in my opinion, very unique and quite incredible. So how did you come to represent Beacon and Andover?
It was actually a referral, like most like most of the cases I get a lot of referral from other attorneys, from other clients, and Beacon and Andover obviously needed an attorney to represent them, and they got my name. They had other names. I interviewed, and I got the job.
And so is this the type of work that your firm mostly handles? Well,
my firm, we have about 170 lawyers, and we handle work in all different aspects. We have a securities and commodities litigation group, and I'm co-chair of that group. And the work that we do is in all areas of securities and commodities. I'm a former SEC prosecutor.
Okay.
So for many years I was prosecuting those who have done wrong.
Yeah, I thought your name sounded familiar.
And I defend a lot of people who are in trouble with the SEC. I defend a lot of people who are in trouble with the U.S. Attorney's Office, the New York State Attorney General's Office, and I have a lot of dealings with those various agencies, and I also do a lot of securities class action work.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today to talk about the settlement. We really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure, Spencer. Thank you very much.
For more information on this or other topics, subscribe to BloombergLaw.com. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for joining us. Bye, everybody.